Jesus.
Jesus ain't got nothing to do with this place.
Welcome to In Defense Of, making the case for overlooked, forgotten, or derided movies in 5 minutes or less. If you don't have 5 minutes, here's 5 seconds.
Michael?
Today, In Defense Of, Halloween 4, a 1988 entry in the long-running horror franchise that's essentially an action film version of the original. In 1978, escaped murderer Michael Myers killed over a dozen people in his hometown. 10 years later, he's at it again. Now a folklore figure in the town of Haddonfield, Michael has returned in pursuit of his young niece, while longtime foe and former psychiatrist Dr. Loomis is on his trail once again, determined to stop another killing spree.
Welcome to hell.
Halloween 4 was directed by Dwight H. Little, who's dabbled in a bit of everything but is most famous for his work in action movies. His influence is all over this film. The first Halloween is known for being an intimate slasher set on a suburban street with Myers silently stalking house to house. Here, in a moment that's the perfect metaphor for the combination of slasher and action, he stabs someone with a gun. Dwight Little and writer Alan McElroy understand this is 1988 and slashers are old hat. Everyone knows all the story beats of the genre pioneered by the original. Introduce some young people, kill them off, have one girl survive. We know that Michael, Dr. Loomis and young niece Jamie are on a collision course. It's a case of not if, but when. To combat this, the creative team have gone full tilt to blast through as much of the fluff as quickly as possible and get to the good stuff. We have a solidly creepy ambient opening. Then, 6 minutes in...
No, I still don't understand.
No wasting any time here, no drawn out stalk and slash suspense. Myers literally interrupts another character mid-sentence as soon as the relevant plot information has been divulged to shove his thumb through his skull. That's actually a trend in this movie. Most people die by having thumbs or fingers shoved into them. It's particularly brutal and fits the full-on vibe of the rest of the film. My favourite aspect of Halloween 4 and my number one reason to recommend it is that the characters avoid the stupid decisions you're used to seeing in horror. Here's a couple of examples. Dr. Loomis shows up at Haddonfield Police Station ranting and raving about how evil is returning to the town. We've seen this in a million other films. The police laugh him off as a crazy old man and only realise the truth when it's too late. Not here. It takes about, 20 seconds for them to check out his information and recognise that it's legitimate. I love this. These cops are useful. They're not incompetent cannon fodder as in so many other films, and along with the action slant, it really adds a unique dimension to the film. Later, a gang of trigger-happy rednecks turn up at the school to rescue our lead. They're told that Michael Myers is inside the school. Again, we've seen this plenty of times. "I'm going in," cry the rednecks. He doesn't stand a chance against my rifle before they're easily picked off one by one. Not here. They leave. They do the smart thing and they just drive away. This is so satisfying and it really adds a dimension to these characters. These characters lived through the carnage of the first two movies. Their children were among Michael's victims. They recognise that the threat is legitimate. This plotting also means that Donald Pleasance's slightly loony performance as Michael's war-scarred Ahab is great fun. He's simultaneously the crazy old man going off on rants about the nature of evil, as well as the sage mentor dispensing knowledge. That's rare to see. Our lead girl, Rachel, is solid. She's more assured and less panicky than Jamie Lee Curtis was in the original, perhaps reflecting the differences in audience attitudes between the horror boom of the 1970s and the slashered out 80s. One final thing, the film looks great and there's this persistent dreamlike imagery that pops up again and again. This image with the cheerleaders is my favourite of the lot. Halloween 3 is typically the series entry that pops up in underrated horror lists, as it's a solid and daring film that doesn't feature Michael Myers despite bearing the Halloween name. These days, I think most horror fans are well aware of Halloween 3's strengths, and instead I think it's part 4 that doesn't quite get the love it deserves. It does have problems though. Every time I sit down to watch Halloween 4 I think, this is going to be great, I love this movie, and every time I forget about the lull that happens at the 50-minute mark. The first half of the movie is great, then nothing happens for 10 minutes. All the momentum of the film is lost. Luckily it does pick up after the aforementioned school scene, but geez, do those 10 minutes drag. Halloween 4 has been criticised for being too much of a retread of the original, which I can understand. It's kind of funny that Halloween H2O was released on the 20th anniversary and that ignores parts 4 to 6, and now there's talk of a new one for the 40th anniversary that ignores everything except the original. How many timelines is this franchise going to have? The ending of Halloween 4 is pretty stupid and it leads directly into parts 5 and 6, which I really dislike. They're just silly.
Fuck off, Wade.
Well, the first Halloween. That's a prerequisite for watching this. Even if you're not a horror fan, Halloween is the perfect example of how clever movie making with limited resources can create an experience far beyond the sum of its parts.
Don't touch him, Jamie!
Unfairly overlooked, Halloween 4 is a rare combination of horror and action, a genre that doesn't have too many standout entries. Aside from the original, this is easily my favourite in the Halloween franchise. How do the Part 4s of other horror franchises stack up? Friday the 13th Part 4, aka the final chapter, Haha As If, is easily one of the best of the series. It relentlessly builds tension and the kills are especially nasty. It was directed by Joseph Zito, who like Dwight Little is more known for his action output. Nightmare on Elm Street 4 doesn't make any sense. Freddy is brought back to life by a dog peeing on his grave, but the whole movie looks stylish under the direction of Rennie Harlin, another director who's now more known for his action films. Sensing a trend? This is where Freddy starts to get really silly, but it's dopey fun and there's a nice little scene featuring a time loop that feels way ahead of its time. Hellraiser 4 is Hellraiser in space. There is a good movie in there somewhere, but there are troubles in production and what we're left with really isn't worth your time. Bride of Chucky, aka Child's Play 4, is a black comedy horror directed by a Hong Kong martial arts director. It's brilliant. Ignore anyone who says otherwise.